of the Education and Communities Committee meeting. This meeting has been held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during this process will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policies available through the Council website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meetings protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have received invites to the meeting. And with that, can I hand over to Diane for a roll call and apologies and declarations?
We have an apology for absence from Paul McCune. We now use the roll call for declarations of interest. The following members please indicate that there is a meeting person for remotely. Councillor Armstrong.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Brennan.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Property.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Daisley.
Present remotely.
Councillor Law.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Maguire.
Present remotely.
Councillor McVeigh.
In chamber.
Councillor Moran.
Present remotely.
Councillor Quinn.
Present chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
Present remotely.
Reverend Burt.
Present remotely.
Mr. Doherty.
Present in the chamber.
Reverend Donaldson. Are there any further declarations of interest from those announced at the first part of the meeting?
See anything? Okay, can we move to agenda item number 9? First agenda item on this part of the agenda. This is a presentation with regard to historical links to slavery. It ties into what we discussed at the community side of the meeting, and it's just the excellent work that has been done on this. We thought it would be good to a presentation to be done on it. Ruth, you want to start us off?
Yes, just to say, intensely proud to have won the COSLA award for this, particularly around the community engagement. And our presentation to COSLA showcased some of the work that we've got in our museum service as part of that presentation. Desperately hoping the IT works so that it can be the first part of the presentation. And that leads us on to Elaine, who will talk us through the sector leading, I would say, work that education services have done to make sure that our young people in Inverclyde realise the story behind Inverclyde's history and its links to slavery. So I've got my fingers crossed, hoping that technology works.
Over to you, Elaine.
It's actually up to Colin.
Paul, video.
Just a second, convener. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
15th June 2020. Dear councillors, civic leaders in Inverclyde must find the ambition to tell the story of Greenock and Port Glasgow's links to the slave trade to ensure there is a deeper understanding of the part that slavery played in the development of the area. That's a quote from Sean Kavanagh, 2016. In keeping with the current global discussion regarding racism, I think that more can be done to clearly acknowledge the part that slavery played in the warp and weft of modern-day Inverclyde. Such actions will raise awareness of racist attitudes and ideologies that persist. I am the grandson of one who worked on sugar estates, formerly plantations, all of his life. I have experience, knowledge, and insight to offer on this topic of discussion, should anyone wish to engage. Yours sincerely, Ernie Peters.
Working within our community, we began to piece together the story of our area's links to the transatlantic slave trade. This evil trade was characterized by a form of business known as the triangular trade. This involves slave ships leaving British ports like Greenock and Liverpool and then sailing on to African ports loaded with goods manufactured right here in the UK. There, the slave traders would purchase enslaved Africans by exchanging these goods, and then they would set sail for the Americas via what has now become known as the Middle Passage, selling their enslaved cargo in these new European colonies. And afterwards, the slave ship would sail back to Europe to begin the cycle again. In Greenock, the goods we started trading with were the large amounts of herring required to feed the enslaved Africans working in the plantations of the Caribbean. People from Inverclyde participated in the forced removal and transportation of 12.5 million people from their homes in Africa into a short, brutal life of cruelty and enslavement in the tobacco and sugar plantations of America and the Caribbean. Sugar brought wealth. Great fortunes were made, and this fueled the rapid growth of the area, with Greenock's population increasing nearly 8-fold over 100 years. From Greenock's first MP to our most famous son, James Watt, the wealth created directly and indirectly by our involvement in this evil trade can still be seen today in the street names and buildings we pass or work in every day. From the grand homes of the shipping merchants and industrialists to our great civic buildings. It also brought the fight for liberty into the heart of our communities, with many who led those fights coming here, often at great personal risk, to argue for freedom and justice. Our ongoing work continues to reveal more stories about this hidden history.
This is an important heritage to explore, least of all due to reparation and reconciliation within the area.
I'd like to see the story being told through a specific curriculum. We should make young people aware how Inverclyde became Inverclyde.
We have gained money from the industry, from someone else's misery. It's hard, but there's a real story to tell. Acknowledge it happened. This was the reality. Face up to it. Don't bury, as that is a form of denial.
I think it's important to tell Greenwich's historical story. Slavery is part of the story and that should be included. Use the history as a learning tool. We can't eradicate history.
Being willfully blind to the fact that the ground below our feet was built on the backs of slaves is insane.
Hand over to yourself, Elaine.
Thank you. My apologies, I keep losing my signal. I've been in and out of the meeting a few times there, so hopefully as I start to share, you'll still be able to hear and see me.
We find just now, Elaine.
Just trying to share. Hopefully you're able to see that. Is that coming through to you?
No, not yet.
No.
Do you have that yet?
No.
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 And it's not letting me exit to try sharing again with you. I don't know if it's perhaps my signal. I'm not getting it. I'm unable to share for some reason. I don't know why it's not. I'll try once more.
Okay.
My apologies, it's not letting me bring it up to share.
I've got the PowerPoint on my laptop. I'll try sharing it and see if we get to it that way.
Okay, I don't know if it's my permissions.
Now, Elaine, hopefully you can see what was put up on the screen, so you can speak to the slides and then Ruth can move them on at your command.
It must be my signal. I'm not seeing those, but what I'll do is I'll just hope for the best in the right order and we'll go for it. So are you all seeing the slides just now then?
So the first slide is public consultation.
Okay, let's go for that. Thank you. As you heard in the video from one of the members of our Historic Links to Slavery Advisory Group, and who was also a former pupil in Inverclyde, they considered it vital that we address the issues through education and that the story be told through a specific curriculum insert, and that we be open about it, starting with our young people. So a public consultation followed by listening events also took place, and the majority of those who engaged also identified including Inverclyde in school curriculum as one of the best ways to tell the history of the Inverclyde area, as you can see from the slide. An inclusive curriculum subgroup was then formed to drive forward plans for a more inclusive curriculum. And we can move on. Listening to the voices of our community, the aims of our inclusive group were quite clearly set out to us. We were to work to ensure that every young person who attended a school in Inverclyde would understand the role that their locality had played in the transatlantic slave trade, and also to cultivate an even more inclusive, tolerant and racially literate community. So to inform our work, we started by reaching out to our staff and our young people to gather their thoughts and their views. If we can move on again. We invited all secondary practitioners and senior phase pupils from each of our secondary schools to meet to gather their personal experiences, their views. And the former pupil that I previously mentioned, they led the pupil consultation and fed back the key messages to our group. Our young people shared that they felt it was important to start learning about Black history and culture at an age. They understood the need for every young person to see themselves reflected in our curriculum. Increasingly, our schools have become a much more mixed and diverse community, and there's been much that's changed since this consultation. And thank you. If we move on. Education Scotland developed a building racial literacy programme known as BRL, with the aim of ensuring that every Scottish educator is racially literate and not race evasive. And delegates from all sectors were invited to join and co-create the first iteration of this programme. From Inverclyde, we had our education psychologist, Scott Chalmers, and a teacher, Katie D'Souza, who were part of that initial cohort. Katie's gone on to be named the joint winner of the prestigious GTCS Saraj Lal Award for Pioneering Spirit in Equality and Diversity, and we continue to have Inverclyde staff to participate in every cohort of the BRL training. Thank you. If we move on again. We started work to develop and incorporate a local history project within the school curriculum. We brought all of the relevant materials together into one space to support the writing of this resource. And we made use of Nusrat Uthmani, who was a primary educator in Glasgow, now based in Stirling. We brought together her critical thinking model to ensure that we drew the resources that were fit for purpose. We used the Inverclyde Transnational Slave Trade Audit, which had been created, was a crucial document which it guided the writers as we created the learning resource, and it ensured that the project was anchored in the history of the local area. Thank you. If we move on again. Building on the feedback from the consultations and our learning from our BRL training, we arranged for teachers from our secondary schools to participate in the creation of the resource. It was created at the Watt Institute over a course of 5 days. All the materials within there, we had access to the museum staff throughout that time, and having subject matter experts on hand, it was hugely beneficial to us over those 5 days. Despite having experienced teachers on board, we still spent time training them for this specific purpose, making sure that they made full use of the audit materials and the BRL training that we had access to. After the initial delivery of the course, we evaluated it. So it was trialled in 4 of our 6 secondary schools. We evaluated it. We took pupil and practitioner feedback on board, and then we made improvements for the 2023 delivery, with the resource being used across all of our secondary schools this session. We've moved to the last slide. And this session, 23-24, every S2 child who attends a secondary school in Inverclyde will know and understand Inverclyde's role in the transatlantic slave trade. We've become a much more multicultural community in recent years, and we as a community are embracing this. That's me. Thank you, Ruth, for sharing.
Thank you, Elaine. Elaine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up. First of all, I congratulate the team on the COSLA award. I think that's first and foremost to say well done, and thank you for the presentation today. And what I'll do is I'll open up to any questions or comments. Online, Nancy, online. Elizabeth.
Thanks, just to completely associate ourselves with the comments you just made there, Jim. It's fantastic, and the video was brilliant. That was a really great video as well. So thank you very much for presenting that to us, Elaine. The question I've got is, we've now had a kind of cohort of young people who've gone through the S2 resource, and I'm just wondering, I'm really keen to hear their feedback on it and how it's landed, how it's been received by them. And any particular feedback they've got, either in terms of how it's made them think and feel, or about how it can become better as we move it forward in the future years.
Hi, Elaine, did you hear that?
Thank you. It's been very. I did. I think I picked up it all. Hopefully, it was very positively received by our young people. Comments were more really the feedback. Any feedback for improvement was really around kind of technical issues or PowerPoint things. It wasn't about the actual content, but our young people fed back very positively, particularly around it being entrenched in Inverclyde and relevant to the context that they were living in. Very positive feedback from them.
Thanks, Elaine. Thanks for that. David?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I thought that was very good, actually. Just a couple of points. I think it's important. It was mentioned that Inverclyde people were involved in 12.5 million slaves being transported to America. Our share of that was relatively small. There was barely a handful of slave ships coming into Port Glasgow and Greenock. places like Liverpool and Bristol handled a lot more. So just a sense of proportion. With regard to the Shaw Stewart family, Stewart is spelled S-T-E-W-A-R-T, and Sir Michael Shaw Stewart is the Masonic Lodge in Kilmacombe is named after him. But overall, a good film.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for that. I suppose from our point of view, we were the beneficiaries from the sugar that was built this area from the West Indies, and those sugar plantations were staffed by slaves. But no doubt we can all have a really in-depth argument about it. Can I bring Natasha in next? Natasha?
Thank you. So echo what my colleagues have said. Thank you so much to everybody who's put the work into this. I think it's really important that we are creating resources that are locally based, and I think it is great, and it's a testimony or a testament to the team, the fact that the pupils have seen that's been a real positive, that it is about Inverclyde. It's not a national resource that's looking at a much bigger picture. I think it's really important that we do understand how intrinsically linked we are to things like slavery. My question was just, I have two kind of, so one was around, it was child in 4 out of 6 schools. So is this now going to be rolled out across all schools? And my second question was just around the teachers that were trained. So is there specific teachers in each school that is going to be delivering this? Or is it going to be that all our teachers will be made able to run this resource?
It's a question on the curriculum. I think I'll let Michael come in, because it's sort of designed to his through, but Michael.
Through you, Convener, Natasha, if I think I've got your question correct, the connection wasn't great there. So as Elaine said, all the 6 secondary schools will deliver this to every single S2 pupil in Inverclyde this year, after the trial last year. And what we have set out in our service improvement plan, which has been through committee, is a strategy to support all establishments 3 to 18 to continue to have a focus on building racial literacy across the curriculum and every element of the work of every establishment. And the officer team have ensured that that is in place. We can find that in people's plans. Clearly, some schools are further on in their journey than others, but we're utilising that to our advantage. So you may have picked up on Twitter from last week, we had a phenomenal pupil-led conference arranged by Katie D'Souza at Newark Primary School. And you will also recall from their inspection that this is an area of best practice identified by Education Scotland. So we actually had primary pupils from Newark leading the secondary pupils to do an audit and review of where they are within their school, and sort of a call to action to go back. The children had my permission to go and knock on the head teacher door and say something needs to be done, and Moorfoot reported that had actually happened. So we are also establishing now a group of quality coordinators from every establishment, which Elaine and others are leading on, to try and support schools to identify ways to continue to evolve this work, because it can't just be an S2 topic, box tick, and we all move on and think we've done our job. So it's far more wide-reaching than that.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Was that okay, Natasha?
Yes, thank you, and it's great that it's going to be beyond S2, because that was one of the points I'd written down, but I'm like, we need to make sure that we're rolling out in a way that is manageable for schools, so thank you for that. Thanks.
Thanks, Natasha. Francesca?
Thanks very much, Convener, and thanks so much to Elaine for that presentation. I was thinking about Mrs. D'Souza while that was going on, and she was obviously mentioned, Michael's mentioned there's some more there, and I'm thinking that excellent film there combined with the Newark Primary film just gives such a kind of rounded picture and lots of food definitely for thought about the unearned white privilege that most of us, I think, in the community have, and that we may or may not be conscious of. And I think you can see from that film there so clearly how that has how the links to slavery have developed in Inverclyde. I think it was great to see Frederick Douglass mentioned in the film, and many of us will know that he made a visit to Inverclyde as part of his tour, and some places when he visited his tour have really recognised that in terms of like Belfast statue, and it would be great to see Inverclyde recognising that even more. I know I previously mentioned possibly street names, which doesn't at all do justice to somebody like that's legacy, but I think that would be something really important for us to look at as a next step going on from that. So I suppose to conclude, I'd just really like to thank the people who were involved in the making of that film specifically. We didn't see a wee credit at the end, but it was obviously really talented work going on in that. And I think also to the staff who were involved in the listening events and the people who shared their ideas and experiences so generously to develop that film. And that's great to hear what Michael's saying about schools equality coordinators as well, because I think it's something that you're absolutely right, we need to look at throughout the whole curriculum. When we see, and not just schools beyond that, into our community, but I've often thought, for example, about the reading books we have, the examples we use in our curriculum, everything like that should really be recognised in those experiences about equality and diversity. So thanks so much for that presentation and the tone that it set. Thank you.
No further questions? No. Lynn?
Yeah, thanks. So thanks for that. Thanks, Elaine, for the presentation. You know, I think I agree that the video, you know, in that time just pretty much tells the story well. So I was just wondering, I mean, obviously Guruk is a mention in there for the particular reason. Could that video be available? So I think it might be useful for maybe our community council to showcase that video and have a conversation there. I think that might be a useful start of that conversation. Thank you.
Yes, the video is publicly available. It's been tweeted and made available through our corporate comms and through social media. Obviously, my one follower on Twitter hasn't picked it up yet, but I'll retweet it and make sure that we retweet it again, with the committee having seen it.
Yeah.
And finally, I'll do a wee shout out to Sean Cavanagh, who Sean worked with me on the Radical War Memorial. So it's good to see him. He's teacher at St Thomas.
No, Clydeview.
Clydeview. Sean, so it's good to see he's still involved in local history as well. So with that, just thanks everybody very much for that. It's just over half an hour, and I hope you thought it was worthwhile doing. It's important as well for us as an education committee to see what's getting done on our behalf. And with that, can I move on to agenda item number 10, which is the revenue budget report. Ian, are you there? Can you take us through this?
Yeah, thanks, convener. So this is the education revenue budget report for period 5 up to the end of August 23. The education revenue budget is currently 102.51 million, and the latest projection is an overspend of 713,000, or 0.7% of the total budget. And that's an increase in the expenditure of 355,000 since last committee. Section 3.3 of the report lists the main variances responsible for that projected overspend. And it's probably worth noting that the vast majority of the overspend relates to the ASN budgets and also transport. Section 3.4 and Appendix 4 provide details earmarked reserves. There is no slippage to report at this time, as expenditure is currently ahead of what we planned it to be. I'm not requesting any environments this cycle, so committee are just asked to note the projected overspend of 713,000 as at period 5 for the education part of the committee. Committee are also asked to note that the action taken to bring the budget back on track will be reported to the next committee. And the current community's projection that we talked about earlier, that's currently got an underspend of 218,000, which will be reduced down by 155,000 when the utilities part is given back to inflation contingency. So essentially 63,000 offsetting against this overspend, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that. I'm going to ask Ruth to comment. Ruth, it seems quite a large overspend. I know the Education Committee has got the biggest budget, and obviously ASN Transport is top of our list in that. Is there any comment you would want to make? Are you quite confident that any budget pressures will be looked after?
So we're looking at the ASN Transport as a budget pressure, and you'll also know that we've got that on our delivering differently. We're looking to have a deep dive into the increase in costs and how we might be able to manage that. The presently, we are sitting with an overspend as a committee, so we're looking at every possible penny we can get through management of vacancies, management of non-essential spend, and to see how we can bring that in line. We are the biggest. We are a big budget, and we can see swings in this sometimes. We're not seeing the big underspend that we used to see on the teachers on the supply budget. So everything within local councils is now getting just tighter to manage. And with ASN transport going up as much as it has, it's put a real significant pressure on this community.
Thanks, Ruth. I'll open up to questions. David, can I bring you in first?
Yeah, thank you, convener. I really do think this overspend is extremely disappointing. We have, through the members' budget working group, prioritised education over the past 5 years, and the money we're spending per child in nursery, primary and secondary school is well above the Scottish average, and it really, I think it is extremely disappointing that we're projecting this overspend, given the concentration we've given to education recently. There's one comment I would like to make is about the ASN budget, Ian. Is the ASN not totally controlled by the council?
You're on mute.
Ian, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Through you, convener. Yeah, the ASN budget is fully a council budget. It's part of their code budget. It's made up of several different lines like resources, transport, placements for children out with Inverclyde. So it is a budget we are totally in control of. But obviously, it's demand led.
Thank you, Ian. Are you using SPT to help with this? I notice SPT is mentioned.
Through you, convener. Yes, the ASN transport contracts are managed by SPT. And we pay a management fee, obviously, for using their services. So all of the transport contracts are done through SPT.
But we do the ASN ourselves, don't we?
No, the ASN, the contracts I'm talking about here are done through SPT.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, David, I'm going to let Ruth come in before I make a comment myself.
Yes, and another contextual analysis of this is that you will remember that we cannot reduce our teacher numbers. So the Scottish Government has asked us to maintain the teacher numbers regardless of what it was on pupil-teacher ratio and whether or not it's perceived to be more generous or less generous. The number, we've been required to maintain the number. Now, previously reported to this committee was the effect that the attainment challenge would have, but from our core budget at the moment, teachers cannot be used to offset any other pressures.
Okay, David. Can I bring
that's thank you, Ruth.
Okay. Can I bring Robert in? Robert?
Thank you, Jim. I don't know if this is probably the right place to bring up, but it's on the the ASN. Where does Lomond View sit in all this? Because we were told that Lomond View would be a great vehicle for kids with special needs, and in fact we could take people from outside Inverclyde to this facility. Now, I don't know where that facility is at the moment, but certainly I'd like an update on it, because we spent an awful lot of money on that and we never seem to get it mentioned anywhere. So I just want to know where we are on Lomond View.
Ruth, I'll let you comment on that. I think we've got to be careful with regard to schools.
We are looking at Lomond View, and we have got that under delivering differently. Lomond View is a fantastic resource to be able to keep people within the authority. And I know Michael and his team are looking at Lomond View and how we can make sure that we're keeping as many of our young people within the authority where possible. In connection to the ASN transport, Lomond View, any pupil who attends Lomond View is transported there. And just to context to ASN Transport, I don't think we're the only authority that's seen significant rises in our transport for pupils with additional support needs. And the initial analysis it's basically about cost. It's not that the pupils have risen, it's not that we're seeing a huge amount in increase in the journeys, but the journeys that are happening, we're seeing have almost doubled in cost. So that's something we have to manage.
And I've got in that for me, I think I'd prefer if it's just transport rather than singling out ASN. But I think that there is a danger in putting it as all ASN's fault. I think in this it's a transport budget and we're over a transport budget and there's various reasons for that. I'm delighted that we're going to be looking at that under delivering things differently. And hopefully we'll get more reports on that, maybe through the budget working group on what we can do. But we're spending more and more of our money on transport in general here. So hopefully we'll come back with some answers to that. Can I ask, is there any other questions? No, can I agree the paper? Thank you. Can we move to agenda item number 11, which is the capital programme? Eddie, do you want to start us off on this?
Thanks, Convener. As normal, includes under the capital stream. Generally, we're projecting on 337 budget for the year, and we're well through that spend at the moment, with no slippage being reported. The majority of our activity now is through the life cycle programme, and as noted in the report, there's a summary in Appendix 2, which it shows all of the activity across the various schools and early years facilities, and what we're spending on life cycle activity. On CO2 monitors, there's just a small amount of funding left from the Scottish Government allocation, which we're using to refresh the existing sensors across the estate. On universal free school meals, a very brief update there. And we're already implementing that, and the work was taken forward in June and over the summer holiday within various kitchens to do that, and we'll continue to engage with Scottish Government and Scottish Futures Trust in respect of data gathering exercises at the moment. And the last item there, just confirming, as we verbally confirmed at the last committee, on the reinforced aerated autoclave concrete position, and the fact that we have concluded our surveys across the estate, and St Michael's Primary School remains the only school with that material present, and we have a management strategy implemented to monitor that going forward, and are considering options for the future remediation. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Eddie. And I think appendix number 2 is quite helpful to see the scale of work that's getting done in all our schools. So thanks for that. It's probably been done before, but it just makes it obvious exactly what's happening in all our schools. I'll just open up to any questions. None in the room? And none online. It does show, for people who've been here a long time, we used to spend an awful lot of time under the capital report, so it just shows you the work that you and your team's done, Eddie. So well done again, and can we agree with the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Can we move to agenda item number 12, which is the it's the CGIPS report. Ruth, are you going to start us off on this?
Yes, so this is the Education Committee's Committee Delivery and Improvement Plan. It's in the Pentana format. Although it's the first update the committee's had, it's actually the second update that the officers have put into Pentana because of the timing. There's been slippage in a couple of actions in paragraph 3.7. The application for the National Heritage Lottery Fund has either been recently submitted or is just about to be submitted, so that's now underway. And the second bullet point links to the Historic Links to Slavery Working Group, and we'll now be looking at the slavery trail and any work that we take forward through the curriculum results as well. 3.8 takes us to actions that we have not yet started, and that's because of timing. If when we work towards the Scottish Attainment Challenge Year 3, we can only start it when Year 3 starts, so it's not seen as slippage. And the same with the Gaelic Medium consultation exercise, that we won't know the outcome of that till 2024. Some of the KPIs, after consultation with the members, we have removed. quite a lot, although they're still available on the LGBF, and that has been the way the total tariff score is presented. We've only left the overall total tariff score and also quintile 1, which is decile 1 and 2 for the tariff scores, although we do perform extremely well in 2, 3, 4 and 5 as well. And if you go on the LGBF, you can see it taken down that way. And we've also added some additional KPIs, again at the request of members. And the risk assessment for the committee plan is in as appendix 4. And happy to take questions.
We're just on the risk assessment. If you've been used to risk assessment and you see our risk assessment, it looks quite worrying, if you could put it that way. Is there any comment you would like to give us, sort of reassurance on the risk assessment of those of us who are maybe used to be seeing these and seeing these quite a lot?
So we'll carry risk assessments for a lot of the work we undertake, and it's divided into two aspects. One is how significant will the impact be, and how likely is it to happen. So something could have a significant impact, but be less likely to happen, and they're then given a rating. So you'll see the things sitting at the highest risk for this committee are the impact of budgets. And we're expecting to see that over the whole of the service we offer. And you know, we're working in a financial climate, and less money will mean more risk to services, and also particularly the one about the increased needs of additional support needs. So we're basically saying that, you know, because of the increase in costs of transport, that the committee will have this money elsewhere. As we go down to things that are less perceived risk in the factor 12s, we've got the inability to attract or retain our staff, especially with certain skills, and making sure that we retain people with professional competencies. A high turnover of staff will inevitably impact on services. And then also the strategic planning risk linked to the partner resources as well, and making sure that we are in step with national reform as that's brought forward. So whilst the risks, it doesn't mean they definitely will happen. It doesn't mean that they will have a hugely difficult impact, but it's saying that we've got to mitigate against those. And if we know they're coming, then we as officers need to look at the current controls we'll put in and what we'd have to do to mitigate against those things happening.
No, thanks for that, Ruth. I just think it's important when members say that we do, you know, it's part of the council remit to look at these things and ask questions on it as well. So, no, thanks for that explanation. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Kimberly. You know, I always say I like a good performance report, but I really love this performance report in terms of the clarity of the information that's presented and how it's actually shown us trends, particularly given that we've had the disruption of COVID, and it's quite hard to know where's what and what's where and what can be compared with what when you've had that kind of level of disruption. So it is really, really useful. This is a question about, it's based on the top line of information on page 131, and it's really about the participation measure for post-school destinations. I'm just aware of the journey that we've come on as a council with that, where there used to be a very wide range of figures relating to that type of measure when it was simply SLDR. I know we've moved on to a national participation measure, which is slightly different, but for us to have 94% or 93.8%, 94% and be 22nd seems hard for my historical little brain to get round. And I'm just wondering, what do we do in terms of that? I guess as everybody else has had the journey of catching up with where we were, because we came on quite a extreme journey with that particular aspect of work. But how do we keep ahead of the game and actually kind of move things forward from 22nd, because I don't think it's where we should be given the focus that we put on it.
So there's two measures. There's the initial leavers destination, so where the initial leavers, young people leaving school, and also the participation measures, which is it takes a longer look at things. And it's perhaps counterintuitive that we've got better, but we've gone down the rankings, and it means others are improving probably at a quicker rate than we are. We're looking at the totality of that. What we're tending to see is a link to our initial leavers destinations, also linking to high participation rates. But in previous years, we have been third or, I can't remember offhand, but third or fourth in the rankings, and everything is very close together. So we're talking points of a percentage here, and when we get down to an Inverclyde level, we're talking about almost groups of 10 pupils. So we're looking at that. We've got the Senior Phase Action Plan, which is particularly looking at not only making sure that the pathways into employment are the right ones, but pupils are getting into the right destinations that will get them into employability when they're in the 20 to 24 age range. There's a lot going on in that space, and it can depend on how others are doing, where we're sitting in the rankings. We are always looking to improve, working with our colleagues in employability, also looking at the destinations for children with additional support needs, making sure that that's fully planned, making sure our curriculum has the world of work in it, rather than just solely academic. So there's a lot of work going on. Inverclyde can be difficult to predict. There's been some years we've been third or fourth in the country, other years when we've been down at 22nd or 23rd, with very slight percentages of changes. So if you look at other authorities, they're tending to go up and down as well. So it's interesting to see how the comparators work as well.
Elizabeth, can I bring Nicola? Do you want to comment as well?
Yeah, I don't want to say too much more, but just assure committee that this is an absolute total focus of mine as the head of education. We have an additional officer in the team for the year to give capacity to the team, and this is his sole remit. A chap called Gavin Brown, I have to say, he's only been with us 3 months and has already made quite a lot of impact in his work. Our initial leaver destination figure for October is much improved, I have to say, but what I'm very interested in is the sustained percentages, because I think you can see some local authorities having a very high initial destination figure, and then it drops down quite dramatically, and that percentage drop interests me. Ours doesn't tend to drop as much. So there's an inference in there about we move children or young people into a positive destination, and then it's not sustained for whatever reason, or it's a short term rather than a longer term move. So we've definitely had this year a much better offer locally, providing much more bespoke packages of destination, including, I have to say, through the the Delivering Differently project at Lomond View, which is showing huge success and you get massively improved attendance. And so, as Ruth said, there are longer pieces of work that we need to do and we are engaged with, but it's absolutely a key focus for us all.
Thanks, it's really, really helpful. I'm just aware that this happens in a partnership space as well, so I'm sitting here in this committee, fully committed to this committee, but wearing my Lions hat and going the college have a part to play in this, the Chamber of Commerce have a part to play in this, the task force has a part to play in this in terms of developing the business base of Inverclyde, and yet the figure, you're accountable for the figure, you know, so I'm just aware that there's lots of people who need to care about this, really. And I'm hoping, not against hope, but hoping that through all the hats that we all wear, that they do care.
Yeah. And through you, Kabir, just again to assure you that there is a governance group that sits across the Senior Phase Action Plan, which is part of the Service Improvement Plan, and there's a wide membership representation there from literally almost everybody that you've referred to in in what you just said, and the partnership working part of Gavin's aim over the last eight weeks has been to build up relationships, being in every school, being with the college, being with our colleagues in Generation, building those relationships, because we'll never do this alone. We have to work in partnership. Absolutely.
Okay, what's that? Yeah. Can I bring Natasha? Natasha?
Thank you, and I want to echo what Councillor Robertson said. I'm really enjoying the format of these. It's very clear, and I really like the risk. I want to say graphs that we've got, diagrams that we've got. I think that really outlines quite clearly what the risks are for this section of the council. My questions, I've got a couple, so please indulge me. So the first one is on page 1, 2, 3, just under the KPI performance, the adult learners one, where it says that 5% or more below target. Is there anything in particular that we're doing to try to stabilise this area of our service? Because I'm aware that a number of the adult learners that we do engage with, they maybe have literacy or numeracy difficulties, and this can help. That can impact the way that they're able to engage with their children, the way that they're able to get around, in public transport, or when they go shopping, or even with the workplaces. So is there anything that we're doing with that? Because when you look later on in the papers, it looks as though there's trouble getting figures rather than it being a drop in number of people actually achieving that. So any clarity on that would be really appreciated.
I'll bring it Ruth in. Ruth?
So I'll get back to you with a specific answer on that. But remember that COVID will have had an effect, and also if we reduce staffing levels, then there will be less people seen.
Yeah, I understand that, and I'll wait for an update on that. And my other question was, my other question was just around Appendix 1 on page 126. One of our actions was increase the uptake of school meals in statutory establishments. We completed it. When will we get information or figures that will tell us whether or not that action plan has been successful? Will that be, I'm guessing because the due date was 30th of April, will that be April next year that we'll get an update on that, or thereabouts?
Yes, so delivering differently has been mentioned quite a few times in this committee.
Yes.
And that's on our Delivering Differently programme, and Tony is looking at use of ICT in particular to help with the uptake in particularly in secondary schools, and how we can make the user experience more pleasant. We've done some research with the young people. They've told us what they think, what would make life better for them, and we're just taking things through procurement at the moment.
Okay, excellent. And final question, I promise, convener and officers. Just under page 127, the strategies for culture and heritage, it's shown a slippage for, you've already spoke about the lottery fund and the instalment of actions. I was just wondering if we're going to have this as an ongoing iterative process, should we update that due date? Just if we're going to be continuing this going forward, should the due date maybe be reflected in that?
So the second we've passed our due date, then we've got slippage. So the system, so the fact that we weren't there for the 1st of September, but we will keep updating this as we look at our actions. So we'll try and get back on track with that. But in the background for Pentana, there's percentages of the way through projects, and it'll show either as on track, not yet started, or slippage. So we were declaring slippage on that because we were saying we weren't where we hoped we would be at this point in time. But we are, I mean, we will have put in the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and actually we'll be on to the next stage of that. So you'll see something else being reported to the committee the next time, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, Yes, thank you. It was just around because we're still doing work on it. I was wondering if the due date should be updated, but you've explained why that's shown as that. Thank you. Thanks, Sabina.
Okay, Natasha. I was just going to say on the secondary school meals, I was up in Inverclyde Academy. Denise was saying how difficult it is when you've got 5 or 6 fast food places dotted all around the school, and young people see that as a rite of passage as well, being able to go out and get their lunch. So it is a difficult one to fix. I really understand that, how difficult it is to try and make sure that young people get a healthy, well-balanced meal when they could go to the Greggs across the street and get themselves a Greggs dummy for a couple of pounds. So with that, can we agree the paper?
Yep, we agreed.
And can we go to agenda item number 13, sorry, and that's the West Partnership involvement, right? Ruth?
So this is a timely report, considering the Cabinet Minister's announcement this afternoon about regional improvement collaboratives. But this is the evaluation report of the work undertaken from 22-23 and the improvement plan for the West Partnership for 23-24. Not an awful to add to it, except if you do look at where the West is compared to perhaps the rest of the country, we're with a very good team of people to take forward collaborative improvement.
Thanks, Ruth. And just on that, because I go to the West Partnership as well, I think what is good is we get linked in with our same social demographic schools. However, in the West Partnership, you're across the area, then you've got East Renfrewshire and Eastern Bartonshire as well. So you actually get that good mix of schools and that good mix of film as well. But how long the Ricks will be with us for will be anybody's guess. But our involvement in it up to now has been the whole positive, I would say, and a whole positive for the teachers that have been involved in it as well. So again, it's maybe a pity that we're going to see the demise of it, at least the budgets attached to them might be going elsewhere. So I'm going to open up questions for them. Nothing on that, can we agree the paper? Can we move along to item number 14, which will be yourself, Michael? You want to introduce the paper?
Yes, I'll introduce the paper and then I'll hand over to Mark Coyle, the project lead for the Teen Challenge, who I think I can see them up there. So this is a particular Mark, could you read yourself? I'm echoing. I don't like the sound of my voice. The best sounds when I hear it twice. So this is a report to committee and seeking approval for the evaluation of the stretch aims that were set a year ago, believe it or not, and then an update on the strategic equity fund plan for 2024, and then provisional set of stretch aims that will cover the periods 22-24 through to 25-26. As part of the Sludge Statement Challenge Fresh framework, all authorities are asked to identify progress towards the stretch aims that were set in 22-23 by September 23. So we're very much looking at the outcomes that we have achieved as a local authority across the academic year 22-23, and that is put as an appendix now to the Samson Quality Report on the Council website, and that's Appendix 1. And what we're also doing here is bringing to you the stretch aims for the next period. To say that it was a challenge within the challenge to set the stretch aims a year ago would be an underestimating. And I think there's been a lot of reflection nationally across the local authorities through ADES. And I have to say, I think we've got to a position now where the approach that's now being taken is more pragmatic, it feels less pressured, it feels better thought through, and much more in the spirit of potentially what was intended that did potentially come to fruition. Before I hand over to Mark, just to remind committee that some of our stretch aims were very ambitious. We were encouraged to be more ambitious, which we were. However, the clues in the title, stretch aims, so We absolutely are ambitious to achieve them, but recognise that some of them may still prove to be a challenge. What we should be seeing through the process is the raising of attainment for all and the closing of the poverty and youth attainment gap. Mark, can I hand over to you?
Thanks, Michael. In terms of the evaluation report, I'd like to outline some kind of key highlights that were in the summary. In terms of the stretch aims, as Michael said, it was a one-year target for session 22-23, and again, we were, I'll emphasise that point, we were asked to be very ambitious in terms of our approach. The overall attainment in terms of the ASO primary 1, 4 and 7 literacy were met in terms of that progress, and it was the highest Q1 attainment that we had over the previous 5 years. A real push on literacy, and when we move on to the SEF plan for 23-24, you'll see a continued push in relation to the stretch aims there. Overall attainment in terms of numeracy, ASO data P1, 4 and 7, again we met our target in relation to that, and actually made really good inroads in reducing the poverty related attainment gap. Our gap grew significantly during the kind of post-pandemic months and years, and we've managed to bring that back down to with a significant response. And again, the numeracy attainment for our Q1s was the highest over the previous 5 years. In terms of the stretch aims for level 5 A to C and level 6 A to C, again they were extremely ambitious as we return to a full diet of examinations. At present we don't have the full actual data. That comes out in February 24 via Insight, and that's when we have our leavers confirmed finally. As previously mentioned in the committee, the annual participation measures for our young people were the highest that they've ever been, and that exhibits a positive trend every year since 17-18. Again, it was very, very ambitious, and we fell slightly below this aim. Attendance continues to be a challenge for not only for the local authority but nationally, and the stretch aim, as we can see, was overly ambitious and was not met, despite the continuous tracking and monitoring of that, both at establishment level, the twice monthly report from Michael through attendance for every establishment, and through local authority approach. It does remain a key priority moving forward, and we tie that in with an authority working group tasked to better understand the reasons for absences, and links in very carefully to the national working group, which our attainment advisor Liz Somerville is part of, and she advises and supports us in relation to that. If we move on to the Core Plus aims, Core Plus aims are specific to Inverclyde's context and were agreed as a target for moving forward. And again, we've made very good progress in most of the Plus stretch aims, especially around our broader achievements, where we had targeted 61 pupils in Q1 target area or target group to achieve further accreditation, and all achieved that award, and that was through CLD input in secondary. And in a readiness to learn approach from Barnardo's, where targeted families and children received bespoke interventions. And again, while significant progress has been made in relation to care experience aims, again, they were very ambitious. However, I want to highlight the significant decrease in exclusions from 27 down to 17. And although we didn't hit our 50% target, we certainly made a reduction of 34%. There are new processes in place, and we will further monitor this as we move forward. Moving on to the SEF plan for 23-24 and the associated stretch aims. We looked very carefully at the plan that we had for last year and looked carefully at the logic model. We took into account the progress that we'd made in relation to the stretch aims, and the plan has been updated with new outcomes tying directly in with the evidence and data we collected, and through that professional dialogue with head teachers and partners. Our core and core plus stretch aims are now over the remainder of the attainment challenge over a 3-year period, and you will see on the plan we have trajectories moving forward. We have milestones at session 23-24, 24-25, with a target at the end for session 25-26, which is the end of the attainment challenge programme in its current format. Stretch aims were engaged in dialogue with head teachers, and again they were agreed And it's a clear focus that we are looking to narrow that poverty-related attainment gap, increasing attainment and attendance, and increasing the pace of learning of our Q1 children and young people. The core areas have actually remained pretty much the same in terms of the NIF measures. However, there has been a slight change in terms of the attendance one, which gives us the opportunity to drill down into key areas of attendance. And from the plan, you will be able to see that we are focusing on secondary stretch aim of attendance. And as we move into Core Plus, we focus on primary Q1 children attendance. Again, giving us that better spectrum of understanding the needs of children attending school, and also of the barriers that might be in place for them to attend. In terms of moving forward with the other Core Plus stretch aims, we've linked that into the Education Services Improvement Plan, and it ties directly into initiatives that are ongoing this session, particularly the launch of the Literacy Framework, which has had a key focus on developing the teaching of reading in the initial stages, and then moving on to talking and listening and writing. So by this time next year, we should hopefully have a completed literacy framework that will be able to support pedagogy across early, right the way through to senior phase and beyond. Again, we will be focusing on care experience, and I think it's clear we need to look not only at the attainment, attendance and exclusion of care experience children and young people, but look at their attainment. And we've got a key focus on attainment at level 5. The present, we're waiting to receive full feedback from the Scottish Government in relation to the draft stretch aims. However, I'd like to present these both the plan and the evaluation to committee for approval.
Thanks a lot, Mark. There's an incredible amount of information in this paper. I'm going to open up to questions. I'm going to bring David in first of all. David?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Mark, I must congratulate you. It's great to have a report where there is relatively little, and it really concentrates on what's needed to improve the lives and futures of our children. I'm particularly impressed with what you're doing in terms of literacy at 1, 4 and 7, and numeracy at primary 1, 4 and 7. Excellent results there. I managed by hook or by crook to get the results for my 3 primaries, Kilmacombe, St Michael, St Francis and Newark. Is it your intention to publish the results of literacy and numeracy at P1, P4 and P7 so as we can compare schools?
I'm going to bring Ruth in for a second. David, I've got to again tell you to watch your language. I've been the convener of this committee for a considerable amount of time, and I can guarantee you there's not been a paper that's been presented to this committee where officers are put into the committee papers. And I find it quite offensive to our officers in that, David. I know you probably didn't mean it as offensive, but that's certainly the way the officers can take it. So I would ask you just to watch your language when you talk about that, because officers bring reports to committee in order to make sure our members are aware of what's happening, to allow them to scrutinise as part of their duties, and also to set policies as well. So I just felt a wee bit off in that comment, David. But with that, I'll bring this in.
No, you're entitled to your view, convener. I've been here for 16 years, and it's only very recently I've seen literacy and numeracy getting priority, and it hasn't been happening for 16 years.
Councillor Wilson has congratulated us 6 years ago on the focus on literacy and numeracy. What I would say is the results for every primary school is available on Parent Zone. So if you go onto Parent Zone, you can see the results for every single primary school in the country and their achievement of levels.
Okay, David, I'm going to bring Francesca first, and then Elizabeth. Francesca.
Thanks very much, Convener, and thanks to Michael and Mark for this report. You're absolutely right, there's a lot of excellent work going on, and it's brilliant to see that brought out here and in the previous reports. I'm really concerned about attendance. You mentioned it yourself, Mark, and it's just an issue of huge concern. And it's not just here in Inverclyde, obviously, that there's so much excellent work going on as well in Inverclyde to try to get young people to come to school, and no stone, I would say, has been left unturned. But we've got all this wonderful sort of initiatives going on in schools, and if young people aren't actually there as regularly as they should be, or as often as they should be to experience them, then there's a real issue. It's a major driver of individual and national success, and it's going to impact on attainment, but also on relationships that young people build, and their personal safety if people aren't entirely sure where they are, where they should be. So I've been reflecting on it a lot while looking through this paper, and I suppose the messages that we as a community need to play our part as well, because there's so much that schools can do and are currently doing, very much so here in Inverclyde. And I'm just thinking about what else. I'm thinking that young people obviously really need to listen to the messages they get, encouraging them to get to school, and where barriers exist to that, then please share that with people, and so that we can address that. And I suppose urging parents as well to listen to the messages they get from school about the importance of attending, because I know that Inverclyde officers and staff are sending these out as often as possible. I think it's just that concern about the lost learning and the lost experiences. And I suppose getting finally to my question, I picked up that England's Children's Commissioner is looking into this, and there's a national campaign there. I'm trying to see if there's a response from Scotland's Children's Commissioner, I'm not too sure, but you have mentioned we've got an authority working group, and I've seen it mentioned as kind of national groups as well, and through the West Partnership. Is there a national response, would you say, to this real and present issue? And if so, what is it? Thanks.
Can I bring Michael in that? Michael?
So through you, Convener, I think attendance at school is a complex area for us. There's no doubt that the attendance that we look at now is quite different from pre-COVID. However, it is improving. I've spent most of my day meeting primary head teachers, school to school. There was an annual chief meeting with myself and the education officer, and we were looking at last year's attendance, and we have a weekly spreadsheet that goes out. We've got transparency across the authority, where every school can see everybody else's day-by-day attendance. And there's a dashboard to support analysis and tracking. So we're looking at the current cumulative figure and comparing it to last year. And in every single school's case, it has improved again. So there's a definite sense that we are recovering on this. I own a team advisor with Somerville, who we have seen speak at committee Edinburgh a couple of times now, has been tasked by Education Scotland to do a report on attendance across Scotland, to present to Cabinet Secretary on this. So it's definitely in Cabinet Secretary's sights, and I think it's at that point that we need to get a further sense of a strategy. The Scottish Government have also reverted back to more regular collecting of attendance data, and we are due our biannual national figure this year. There's a bit of discussion about whether that should move from frequent publication. So away from that, we are doing, I've never seen schools track and respond, look at heads and deputies and other members of staff out doorstepping and supporting families to get children in. But we're also being innovative. We've got a Test the Change project in St Michael's Primary School coming up across the year, where we're really going to do something different with the curriculum in order to see if that changes. I mean, the learning, that link between the learning experience is really enticing, and it doesn't correlate with a change in attendance. So there's a whole range of things being done at family and child level to support the various barriers that might be there that could be mitigated to support better attendance at school, but it is improving.
Thanks for that response, Michael. I think it is important that we can see it's a national issue, but we in Inverclyde are, as you said, virtually second reading and look at it effects of what we're trying to do on it. Elizabeth?
Thanks. Thanks, Convener. I've probably got about 4 things written down based on what you've just said there, Michael. Sorry. This is an absolutely fascinating, I know, absolutely fascinating report. Really, really interesting to read. And I'm assuming this, because we've got a plan that's moving forward for a couple of years, is going to be with us moving into the future. So I'm wondering, I was unused to reading what I've read, if you know what I mean. It was new information presented differently. It took me a lot of time to kind of go, right, what are we talking about there? Is that a good thing that percentage is higher or lower? And I'm wondering, we have the attainment session that we get, the briefing session that we get as councillors. I'm wondering if this is going to be with us for the next couple of years, if we could have this either incorporated into that or a separate one, because I almost have too many things that I want to ask you this afternoon, and I promise to curtail myself. So that's my first thing. Do we have enough scope within the whole body of work around this to understand not only the differences in percentages, but what it is that's making a difference? The qualitative stuff as well as the quantitative stuff would be another question that I have. Children and young people who are care experienced, I am delighted that we're measuring things at level 5. It was a bugbear when I was an officer. Never mind as an elected member that we previously looked at things that weren't even coming up on Insight. Level 3, English and Maths, or literacy and numeracy, not good enough, not what I would want for my young people, and certainly not what I would want for the young people that I'm a corporate parent of. So I'm delighted that we're looking at level 5 there. Is that our decision, or is that a decision that's nationally made? If it's our decision, yay us. If it's national, also good. But if it's ours, I'm even more delighted. And the last point I've got is really just in terms of all of these figures relate to our young people, and I'm just wondering how actively aware our young people are of the part that they play in this journey and this work. And I'm just wondering if there's any way to kind of communicate this journey and these figures and these improvements and the work that's happening in a way that helps them be active participants in this process rather than just passive numbers within it. So a lot of questions there, and there's about 10 million other questions that I've got, but I'm going to leave it at that.
Right.
Okay, here we go. So yes, there is absolutely scope and intention to continue with the same reporting mechanism through the members' briefing, which I think is in the diary for this month. But we will and can add into that some linking what we're reporting to you to the stretchings, and certainly keep that there and bring that back through to, because I think we're now in a better cycle of reporting now that we've established what these stretchings actually are and how we're going to actually set them. In terms of the qualitative element of it, honestly, the work that Mark does, particularly with Liz Somerville and the headship team, in being absolutely clear on what is the impact. And yesterday I was watching Kate Gibson do a presentation at the beginning of their peer review, and when he got to his final bit, he said, so now the so what question, you went to me, he said, that's for you, Mr. George. So they know they're not going to get away with, just a statement of fact. There has to be, so what, you've spent that money at PEF money, so what's the impact? And the PEF planning, if you look at them, they're all embedded within school improvement plans. It's very clear what we're looking for, both in terms of hard outcome, more qualitative evidence. So I think that's there very much throughout the process, and even the peer review process that we're working our way through. That's absolutely the line of inquiry that we have when we're out with supporting schools to validate their own evaluations. I'm going to defer to Mark but on the key experience question. However, I think what Susan Chambers, who you know is the virtual head, was very clear about was that as well as having stretchings, that we absolutely wanted to improve attendance and reduce exclusions. We need it to also be aspirational for these young people in terms of their academics and their qualifications, and that's quite a broad package of support that we have to have high aspirations. Mark, the question was whether the level 5 was an us or them, I think.
Yeah, the level 5 was an us. All the Core Plus are related to us in the context of Inverclyde, and it was from a dialogue that myself and Susan and Ruth and Michael had while we were talking about the initial stretch aims for care experienced young children. And we looked very carefully at the exclusion, we looked very carefully at the attendance, and we felt there was a clear missing point there in terms of attainment and ambition for our young people's attainment. So yeah, that was on us.
Well done. And just to concur, at the start of every secondary school achievement meeting, with Ruth and myself, the virtual head attends, and we do 15-20 minutes on just the care experience cohort, and the same in the primary meeting that I'm having. There's a line of inquiry about understanding and talking through that cohort. Finally, the young people themselves, well, I'm due to meet them tomorrow afternoon. We have a consultation meeting, myself and Ruth, online and sometimes in person. And certainly one of my intentions yesterday was, tomorrow was to speak a little bit about some of this with them, interestingly, as well as just it's a new first meeting of the year to introduce one another to oneself. But again, having been in a number of schools for the last year or so, what the schools are doing to communicate that to the young people and the level of people voice, people leadership. I have to say, yesterday in Clyde took my breath away. They are very, very involved in walk around Clyde. There's QR codes you said we did, that the kids are engaging with. So. And young leaders of learning is another project got me going now, where the young people are actually going out and identifying areas of priority in schools and sort of almost peer reviewing and supporting one another across the authority. So there's a lot of work to ensure they are aware of that.
Thank you. Thanks. No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for all of that.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Can't see any other questions online, and I can't see any other questions in the room. And I thank Michael and Mark very much for that. Paper, very good paper. And can we agree? Thank you. And can we move along to item number 50, which is the setting sustainable rate for early learning and childcare funded providers. Yvonne, are you going to take us through this one?
Yep. Okay, through you, convener. So the purpose of this report is to ask members of the committee to agree an increase in the hourly rate to funded providers for the delivery of early learning and childcare. Recommendation for approval to increase the rate from the current £5.69 per hour per child to £5.87 per hour per child. And to agree that this is backdated to the new term from the 18th of August 2023. Also to agree that the rate will be implemented for all eligible children aged 2 to 5 who are accessing an early years place within a funded provider setting. You'll see from section 3.4 of the report that the hourly rate was set at £5.31 in 2019, and following a consultation with providers, it was then reviewed in 2022 and set at £5.69 in November 2022. Following a further consultation in September 23 with funded providers, we have proposed around 80. This supports providers to continue to pay the Scottish living wage and meet the increasing costs of inflationary pressures. An increased sustainable rate will ensure funded providers can continue to deliver high quality. You'll see from 4.2 of the paper that the Council are proposing an increase of 18 pence per hour per child on the top of the current £5.69. This is in addition to the 50 pence per hour place to provide free meal part of the Scottish Milk and Healthy Snack Scheme. If an increase of the sustainable rate is approved, funded provider contracts would be updated to reflect the revised rate. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I know everyone was breaking up a wee bit there, but we got the first question saying, yeah. And can I open up to questions? No, it's okay, everyone. Can I open up to any questions? Can't see any questions in the room, and no questions online. Can we agree the recommendations at 2.1?
Agreed.
Thank you. Move to agenda item number 16, and this is our annual wellbeing report. Michael, you're going to start us off with this?
Yes, so this is the annual report on the Clyde Wellbeing Service, currently delivered for us by Action for Children. The purpose of the report is to share with members this annual report and this service that delivers our school-aged counselling service. The service is funded from a grant from the Scottish Government and further enhanced with additional finance from the HSCP. As well as the counselling service, the wellbeing service goes beyond that and offers curriculum-based support groups for secondary school pupils, as well as, for example, we have an innovative transition support programme for Primary 7s as they move into KS1. The report outlines the impact the service has had and the evidence that we have in respect of the key performance indicators that have been set for the year. The current contract is now, as I said, in its 4th year, and we are in a contract extension of 1 year, and that means that we are currently procuring for a new service to take up from August 24 when this current service ceases. I suppose that there's a lot in this report, and I'm just mindful of time, but I think overall we've got a positive service that's running, and there's been a huge amount of learning from the service, and as well as that, what we're trying to do at the moment through the procurement process is take the learning to revise the scope and the tender for the next service. So there are a number of key points of learning, particularly reflected in some of the KPIs that we're in the middle of working with partners in health in particular to address, so that we have an even better service moving forward, even better meets the needs of young people in Inverclyde. Lawrence is with me to answer questions, so we'll have to take any questions.
Thank you. Lawrence, is there anything you want to add at this present time?
Yeah, sure. I suppose just to expand a little bit more, Convener, on what Michael was talking about there too. When the initial grant funding came in 2019 nationally to all local authorities, it was very much aimed at a school counselling service, which we have, but we've expanded that with the enhanced funding that we've had, because the original funding was 12 to 18 as an age group. We've lowered that to 5 to 18. But what we've also done is we've created what we'd call the wellbeing service, because it's not just counselling that we offer, because for some children that one-to-one talking therapy, as it were, is quite intense, it's too much, and it's therefore not accessible. So you'll see information in the paper there about Bounce Back in the Blues programme, where they're more curriculum based. They are particularly targeting children with issues related to low mood, anxiety and social, emotional and behavioural issues too. But as I think one of the members had mentioned earlier on about school non-attendance, we also have provision, because we know that anxiety and school-based anxiety is a factor in non-attendance too. So we've asked the provider to meet children out with school as part of what we call graded exposure, a first step in order to work your way back into school too. So certainly school attendance is one of the areas that we're working on through this project too. That's me. I'm happy to take any questions on it.
No, thank you for that, Lawrence. I'm going to open up for any questions. James.
Thanks, Convener. Do we know if having this service available has any effect on the CAMHS waiting list times?
That's a question we've asked. We've had a few meetings with CAMHS asking just that question. I suppose what we have is that this service came into being in 2019. So we had one data set in relation to CAMHS at that stage, and it's not really matched because of the COVID situation just now too. So we're not really matching like for like. What we do know is that CAMHS have actually referred on a number of children, so 27 children last year, for example, who would have come into CAMHS were referred via CAMHS into the wellbeing service. So we have some information there too. We would like to definitively sort of really get there too, but we're not really matching like for like. And that's a picture that's replicated nationally. We've been out to look and have spoken to partners across the West Partnership. So in time, I think we'll get a better data set around about that, but it's really difficult to nail that down just now. And I think probably the best answer in relation to that is the number of children, or looking at the number of children who come into CAMHS, and then CAMHS will refer through a triage system that we have to run by the Community Mental Health Project too. So currently that sits at 27, but we'd look to increase that obviously over time.
James, I'm going to bring Michael in as well here. Michael.
Just to quickly build on what Sanjay, I mean, what we didn't really have prior to this was a tier 2 service. It comes from tier 3, and the innovation around the Inverclyde approach was the referrals coming in and going to as was in central triage. So in actual fact, that's meant that young people, the referrals can come in from family, come in from GPs, it's coming from anywhere, and it's triaged centrally, and that central team decide, is this actually a CAMHS referral, is it tier 3, or as Lawrence is saying, in some cases it's referring transferring back into the Tier 2 service. I think the other challenge, other than just getting that clarity around data, has just been the exponential rise in the level of need in this area. So even as we're bringing this into fruition, it would be very difficult to clear because the numbers actually have increased overall because of the challenges that there are all around us in relation to mental health. But as Lawrence said, it's something that we've been asked in committee before by Councillor Robertson, and we'll continue to try and work with our colleagues in health to get a definitive set of data that will be able to clearly answer your question much more definitively than I'm possibly doing at the moment.
Thanks, James?
Yeah, thank you. That makes sense. Thank you.
Lynn, would you like to come in next?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. So thanks for the report. As you see, all the numbers, it clearly is a much needed service in Inverclyde, and I'm just glad that there is someone there catching these young people, when they need it. It's great that you mentioned attendance in there, because we've had that really important discussion in the last agenda item about attendance, and it's great that you picked up that anxiety and post-COVID social anxiety from some of our young people. So it would be really good if we could look at the KPIs and have something there about attendance. It would be good just to kind of see that potentially if this service is offered right at the outset of that attendance, just be known about that attendance issue, then it accumulates and becomes worse as the time goes on. So it'd be great if that's offered right at the start, but if we could have some sort of KPIs to show that positive, how positive the service had on those that have got a problem with attendance. So that's probably my first bit. The other question I had about reading it is about the waiting lists, and I think it was just some reassurance about the 4 to 6 months that the triage happens as they enter the service and not after the 6. I'm just concerned that there's anyone sitting in the waiting list that actually need to be at CAMHS and they've sat for 4 to 6 months. So it's just a wee bit of reassurance around that thing. And my last point is about the Blues programme and the 13.6% where their score drops. So actually that programme has had a negative effect on them. So it's just what happens to that 13.6% and a wee bit of reassurance about what happens to them.
Okay, sorry.
I was going to bring Michael in first, but Lawrence, if you want to ask a question, go for it.
No, it was more really just to back on just some of the questions that you had there too. So if you want me to come in, I'm happy to do so just now.
No, come in now, Lawrence, because Michael could then come in and add in.
Okay, so I suppose if I go back to front just a wee bit there too. So in terms of the 13%, that's a significant group of young people that we have there in terms of the Blues programme. It's probably a group of young people because you'll also see in terms of the entry criteria into Blues that the children who are accepted into that programme are children with significant additional support needs. So it's difficult to attribute all of the drop, as it were, in the children's well-being to the Blues programme, as it were. There's probably other factors going on in the children's life at the same time too. What Blues tries to do is a cognitive behavioural therapy programme. It tries to provide tools for life for children, so it's not just for the immediate experience that children have. It's due to last 2, 3, 4 years. It's a framework that children have who over time, it's those sort of intrusive thoughts that we have too. You go to bed and you can't get rid of a set of thoughts. It keeps you awake at night. Blues gives children a framework for taking those big intrusive thoughts and breaking them down into manageable actions that they can do, things that you can do tomorrow. And we wouldn't really expect a CBT programme to work for all children right away. Internationally, we think that that's something that works over time, and it would probably be good for that 13% to have a longitudinal sort of look at them to see the impact of Blues. But I wouldn't really attribute the 13% to the Blues programme. There are probably other factors going on surrounding that cohort of children too. With regards to the waiting time, 4 to 6 month waiting time, what we have when children go into triage and come out, we've created a system with the wellbeing service whereby every school knows who their wellbeing service person is. It's not just a sort of a remote group, and prioritisation takes place. So meetings take place between the wellbeing service member of staff and schools to prioritise children within that cohort of referrals to. And what I would have to say also is that we've had a good bit of success, as you can imagine, where escalation of needs has reached ourselves in headquarters for a variety of reasons. And we've got a very good relationship with the provider, whereby I basically will phone a provider where something very alarming comes my way too. And for those small number of children, maybe just hitting sort of double figures and a little bit beyond, there's been around a 2 to 3 week turnaround time for that cohort of pupils too. So we have actually sort of prioritised and put that sort of system into place too. Sorry, Michael.
Yeah, I think there was another question to keep guys for attendance, and again,
yeah,
I think it's not a similar answer to the one that Launce has just given around the Blues project. But I think absolutely, as we're now moving into this next contract phase, we do want to review the KPIs we set out. The KPIs we set out at the start of this 4 years ago have evolved each year. So absolutely, I think that will be one of them that we need to, and that will then probably, I think, another part of the contract, if you like, is to be even sharper with the annual report and be really clear on what we're expecting back in that report on an annual basis.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, okay. Yep. Do I have any other questions on this? Nothing online? Nothing? Can we agree the report? And can we move to agenda item number 17, Ruth, our parent council then. Yes.
So hopefully some good news on this, in that, as you know, we went out for an election for parent council rep. We were able to get somebody. We hounded everybody down over the last year and still didn't manage to get anyone, but the summer was a nice break. The new academic year gives us a fresh group of parents, and we've had some interest. But because of the length of time since the last one, we needed to, and because of the change in people, we're taking it out to election. So this is asking you to note that there's an election process going on for a parental representation. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get some.
Thank you. Oh, Elizabeth.
Just to say that when we do get that, I will bring a t-shirt and I will put it on that one.
Thank you. And can I thank all the officers today? I thought the papers they were excellent and giving us an awful information about the young people within the society. So thanks a lot for that. The thanks
It's not accessible. It's not acceptable. Language isn't acceptable.